You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
This makes my nipples hard.
I was so happy when my grandma would listen to November Rain by Guns N' Roses. I'm like, at least it's kind of in the genre, and it made me feel connected to her, so she accepted it as something that was okay to listen to.
Oh. All right,
okay. I'm going to try again. We're good.
Now this one has a piano in it. That's why I like it. Sorry.
So pretty.
It's a real instrument.
Wait, can you do it? Can you do it in a gangster rap voice?
We did recently start a show with trying to do an 80s rap.
We did.
You know, like one of the just really...
It's there. It's not good, but that's the point.
No, it's not
people
good.
don't listen to this show for good or accurate. They listen to this show, don't they? Yes. Okay.
Actually, Paul, that sounded more like a Canadian gangster rap. A boo.
Drinking that maple syrup, yo.
Sorry, shutting up.
This episode is just going to be us starting the show, I think.
Over and over and over. Hi there, welcome to the show. In today's episode, we are thrilled to have a talented, whether they like me to say it or not, duo from Error 47, a band that creates original compositions infused with a deep, deep love for DOS games and just the right touch of metal. This band is led by both John Paul Sapsford, and he is a professional music teacher and an audio engineer, and Trolls Plymart, or as many of us know him and can pronounce a little bit more easily, as the Space Quest historian. And they currently have a Kickstarter going that we are going to learn a whole bunch about during this episode, and probably something to do with something Space Quest. So, hey guys, how's it going?
How do you not breathe?
That was pretty good. Thank you. Doing well.
First try.
First try. That's right. There were no other takes. That was amazing, guys.
Out of the park. Nothing but net. Swoosh.
Well, I can't help but feel like this intro is really interrupting our conversation.
Yeah, we could just get back to that now, please. That was goodness.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah. We formed a band called Error 47 because we were making music together already, and it occurred to me that John Paul wasn't getting the recognition that he very much deserves for making my ugly shit sound decent. So we decided to put a band together. At least that's my headcanon. I don't know what JPS's is.
That's about it. You know, we were just doing a bunch of music together, and you kind of said, "Hey, let's do this as an actual band," you know, and have like a name and everything like that. And
tell me a little bit about how you chose your name. What is Error 47, and why does it make a good name for you guys?
Oh, I want to take this one.
Go for it. Yeah, of course.
Because I think, again, this is my. I have this internal struggle where I want to decide everything, but I kind of want to give the impression that it's a democracy. So you know, we did a couple of records under a moniker called One Kid from Andromeda. That would be our Duke Nukem record and our Gabriel Knight record. And I figured that's a terrible name for a band when there's two people in it. So I threw out a couple of ideas for names, but I really, really wanted to call it Error 47. So I kept harping on that, like subconsciously steering him towards it. And the reason why I really wanted to call it Error 47 is because, one, it had to sound industrially. It had to sound like it was a 90s industrial band, like, your front 242s, your frontline assemblies, your, skinny puppies, that kind of stuff. It had to sound like it was 90s and raw and, edgy, and anything with a number in it and the word error sounds pretty cool. And the reason why Error 47, why it's a 47 is because, well, obviously it's a Space Quest reference. Apparently it's also a Quest for Glory 4 reference, but I was unaware of that at the time. But in Space Quest 6...
And one that plagued me for years. Ugh. Anyways, go on.
And in Space Quest 6, it crops up once, but it is infamous. If you play Space Quest 6 on a computer that's just slightly too fast, you get all the way to the end of the Polysorbate 60 sequence, you get back on the deep ship, you're supposed to run this little cartridge through a scanner in the compost, and if your computer's too fast, it inexplicably bombs you back to DOS. No warning, nothing. Just bombs you back to DOS with the most unhelpful error message ever. Error 47, not an object. Which we should have called our first album, now that I think about it, Not an Object. But so that's where it comes from. Space Quest 6, the Error 47.
That's perfect. Yeah, in Quest for Glory 4, it's when you're going down for me, it would hit when I was going down the slide at the goo, and then you're at the top. And apparently I could have just turned the speed slider down, which I didn't realize at the time, and it might have let me bypass it, but I didn't know, and I didn't have the internet or patches. So I'm just like, well, there goes my favorite game in the series. I know it's going to be. And it turns out it was one of my favorite games in the series.
No, in Space Quest 6, it is an absolute death sentence. If you're playing this on an old DOS machine and it was too fast, there was no way around it. The speed slider would do absolutely squat. It would just bomb you to dust. And even if you somehow managed to download a save game from somewhere and get past that bit, the game would still fuck around with you later. There's a bit right at the end where you have to climb down to the for those of you who haven't played Space Quest 6, this is going to sound horrible, but anyway, you're microscopic and inside a woman's body, and she has a tapeworm, and you're supposed to climb down this ledge and the screen is supposed to scroll down slowly to reveal this tapeworm inside her bowel, but if you're on a fast computer, the screen just keeps scrolling, goes right past the tapeworm into a black nothingness void, and you can't move and you can't do
just
anything.
like in real life. Yeah. Wow.
I can't stop laughing at how just normal and accepted that would have been if you didn't say something. Well, if you haven't played it, this might sound insane. Oh my god. Well, let me ask you real quick, Charles. Being the literally the historian on this, I was always fascinated with Space Quest 6 having that patch disc that came out, just because it was like this weird, like a CD-ROM only game that you could also have a floppy for. So it was like one of my white whales was finding that damn floppy just because it was a floppy disk that said Space Quest 6 on it, and it was a patch. And I'm just wondering, is that what that fixed?
No, I don't think it fixed anything. I think what the patch. I'm not entirely sure. I think the patch just fixed some driver errors. Space Quest 6 had Space Quest 6 had some problems with because they tried to play multiple digital samples at once in a few places, and I don't know if you ever noticed, but Sierra games in particular, whenever they try to play more than one digital sample, Gabriel Knight, the Sins of the Fathers, really does this a lot. Like when you're in the in any like a voodoo ritual, for instance, when they have this background chatter of the voodoo ritual attendees, and then they're supposed to play like narration on top of that, everything just gets delayed for several seconds. Like SCI is just not capable of playing more than one digital sample at a time, and Space Quest 6 would just regularly crash whenever it tried to do that. So I think that's what the floppy disk tried. I actually don't know. I don't have that floppy disk.
I'm going to take your wild stab at it as fact.
Go to spacequest.net, which is co-owned by myself and Mr. Brandon Bloom. We bought it off the original creator. It should tell you what it actually does. Okay. It's still full of all the original information that the original creator, Franz, compiled.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought it was Jess that was the original. Where did Jess come from?
Oh, see.
It was the broom closet.
Yeah, that was the broom closet. The two rivals at the time of the Space Quest fandom heyday, we had the virtual broom closet and we had spacequest.net. The broom closet was like the OG, and then spacequest.net was the young whippersnapper who came in and tried to ruffle some feathers, and we had like two message boards that eventually ended up like competing with each other.
Awesome.
It turned a little messy, to be honest. But but hey, it was we because Space Quest 7 got canceled, so we ran out of things to talk about, and eventually we just turned on each other. It was a bit messy, but we got back together when Space Venture was announced. That sort of mended a lot of bridges, and in fact, the Virtual Broom Closet and SpaceQuest.net merged to form a singular message board. I mean, all the message boards have been shut down for years and years at that point, but they sort of merged and became the official Space Venture message board for a little while.
What a character arc, it's like a real hero's journey.
I mean, Space Venture brought tons of people together. It was glorious for the first 2 or 3 years.
John, I need to ask you, how did you get into adventure games?
So, when I was a kid, my dad's worked for a bunch of technology companies and computer companies here in Chicago, and one of them did some outsource work for Sierra or something like that. No one remembers. My father sadly passed away for about a decade now. But it boiled down to him getting sent all of the Sierra games. Whoa. So I just grew up playing these games that were being sent to him, and Space Quest was always the best, of course. So that's what
You're in good
I was
company.
on Twitter one time, and I started following DOS nostalgic. I don't even know how I found him, but I did. I was, watching the old DOS games, and then he was retweeting or doing some podcast or something with Trolls. So I just started following Trolls and just got in touch with him a few months later.
And you're leaving out the interesting bit that happened afterwards.
I always love that bit, though, and you tell it better than I do.
Really? Okay, because the last podcast we did, I told the story, so I was kind of looking forward to hearing you tell your side of the story. But
yeah, so I've been listening to some of the I think it was the Backseat Designers podcast, and you had it mentioned about what this guy probably wants to do. Probably wants to do his own games. He just talks like he did at that point. So I decided, because I've been trying to get into doing more scoring work and things like that and getting out of the rock world. So I just dropped him an email and said, hey, if you're ever looking for help, I'm a musician, I'm in Chicago, blah, 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 blah. Let me know. I'd be happy to help out with anything. Just trying to get into this world a little bit. Mm-hmm. He sent me he says it was kind of blow off. I thought it was perfectly nice. Just nope, I'm not, I don't do video games, but thanks, And then a few months later, he was doing a game jam game and with Amber Lee. And he sent me an email saying, hey, is that offer still stand? I need someone to do music for this game. And we did Ramp It Up, and we've been working together pretty solidly ever since. That was, 2017, I want to say?
Yeah, sounds about right. I mean, the story is caked in way too much niceness. That's not how I remember it. But yeah, that is a nicer way of putting it. My recollection is
the director's cut.
My recollection is that I had done an adventure game jam game, and John Paul emailed me and said, "Hey, I'm also a musician, and if you ever need any help, I'd be happy to. I don't want any money for it. I just want to jam with some fine folks." And I totally blew him off. I was like, "No, I do my own shit.
I don't follow anybody's rules but my own."
and then I had to come crawling back to him because we were doing Ramp It Up, and I was going to do the music for that myself, but we were seriously stressed for time. So I did email him on my hands and knees saying, if that offer still stands, I'd love to take you up on it. And he delivered some absolutely wonderful music for that game. Much better than anything I would have done anyway. So yeah, that's my side of the story.
They both work together. The truth's somewhere in the middle. So
exactly. It's been quite a long time at this point. My memory's terrible. So
it's and I have a penchant for self-deprecation, but that is how I remember it.
There's a lot of epic creations that started as much as the adventure games scene quieted down from 2000 to 2010, 2015, and in 2015 with the Facebook groups and the Sierra groups and stuff. I mean, because I missed out on the message boards and all that side of things. To me, that was the resurgence, and all these people started connecting back up. And hey, I used to work for this company, and I'm really interested in it. And that's when the magic started coming back for me. And I started realizing that my whole childhood was coming back to haunt me in a good way. Did any of you kind of notice the same? When did you notice things coming back into style? If adventure games are kind of going to be cool again?
For me, it was right around that same time. I started seeing some of, Dave Gilbert's games, the Whack Did I Games ones. And it just kind of, and what it was for me, actually, as I was sitting here thinking about it, what was that service? Was it, it was an online service before Steam.
Itch? No, Game Jolt?
No, it wasn't Game Jolt. It was an app, and you could play all these games for $10 a month. It was the first service like that. And it was all digital.
GameSpy?
And they had tons and tons of adventure games, all the Space Quests, the Sam & Max, games like that. And that really, and they were some of the highest rated games on the whole service. And they had, AAA games and stuff too. So that was when it started to catch my interest again.
That sounds like GameSpy. I don't know. Might be.
It might have been GameSpy. I can't remember. It's been so long now.
That passed me by entirely because that was a North American thing, and they didn't quite have that over here. I'm in Denmark, by the way, if anyone didn't know that. Ass end of the world, so to speak.
So your timelines for things might have been a little bit different, or was it about the same? I mean, you never really left. I think with you, Trolls, you didn't ever leave the community once there was a
I
community
did.
to be a part of, on and off.
Oh,
But you've always been there longer
I
than
turned
any of
my
us.
back on it. No, I skipped town. I turned my back on it. I was really, when I was 15 years old, I got on the internet for the first time in the local library in the Danish town that I grew up in. And the first thing I searched for was Space Quest, and up comes Roger Wilco's Virtual Broom Closet by Jess. And I sent him an email, which I then went back a week later to check at the local library still. We didn't have internet back home. So, and we got to chatting, and we started swapping floppy disks in snail mail. So I started like contributing stuff to his site by sending him actual 5.25, no, not 3.25 inch, 3.5 inch. Good morning, 3.5 inch floppy disks in snail mail, and then we finally got internet at home, and he started up a message board, and that's how I kind of got into that whole online fandom thing crowd. And then, like I mentioned earlier, when Space Quest 6 came out in 1995, the Space Quest fandom was already like really all encompassing. There were tons. I think at that point there were more Space Quest fan sites online than there were like Quake fan sites or Doom fan sites. It was like massive. And then everyone was looking forward to Space Quest 7, and it got canceled. And like I said, people started getting a little antsy and a little, okay, so what's left to talk about really? And the whole thing just kind of went to a head, and I got a bit like, oh, well, to hell with it then. And so I sort of turned my back on everything and decided to go to university and get a job like a normal person. Yeah, I know, boo. And then for some reason, I can't really remember, I think I just, like on a whim, after like around 2004 or 5-ish, I just decided to boot up Space Quest 1 again and just play through it on an afternoon just for shits and giggles, just to see if I still had it. And it was fun. And then I started like playing games just sort of in my spare time, my off time. When my wife went to sleep, I'd stay up for a couple of hours and play games on, the little laptop we had hooked up to the TV in our little one-room apartment with the sound off and all that. And it was fun. And at one point, I played a game called Gone Home that you might have heard about, which is one of the most powerful and wonderful stories in an interactive modern game that I've ever seen. I literally could not masturbate for 3 days because I was so blown away by it.
That resonates with me. Yeah,
it does. Yeah, I get that.
So I went online to look for people who had played this game because I wanted to know all the ins and outs and secrets and stuff. It's kind of a weak spot of mine. I have to, once I get into something, I really have to know everything about it. Right. And I stumbled upon a Let's Player called Jacksepticeye, who was not the titan that he is today. He had quite a lot of followers, but not anything as astronomical as he is today. But he played Gone Home. And he was doing this Let's Play, and I was like, okay, I've never seen a Let's Play before. That actually looks kind of fun. I wonder if I can do that. And so I just started, looked into how does he actually do that with a little camera in the top left corner and the, game screen and all that stuff. How does he do that? And I just sat down and started like playing games in my bedroom on a shitty little laptop with no lights, and my microphone sort of perched in a garbage bin next to me with a pillow to prop it up, and it was really professional stuff. And, that's when I started YouTubing, just for the shits and giggles of it. So that's how I sort of came back to it, quote unquote. And then I learned that around 2005, 2006 is when Wadge and I decided to bring back adventure games in style and prove that you could actually sell them for money and have a successful career doing it. And digital storefronts were invented, which means you can now circumvent publishers. You didn't have to buy shelf space at the local Costco or whatever the fuck. So that was a whole revolution of itself. I had no idea. I just wanted to play the games that I grew up playing again, now that I actually had spare time to do it in. So, yeah, I don't keep up with the times. I just roll with whatever.
None of us do. We're all listening to vinyls and playing big box games. So,
Yeah, checks out.
My Google search from this morning was, what font did they use in VHSs? I want that for my game somewhere. I don't know where. We'll find split for later.
Dude, we had a whole like search party out for when we did the King's Chill vinyls, because I wanted the label on the actual vinyls to look like those 70s vinyls that all for some reason had the same font on them.
Right.
They
Right.
totally
you,
do.
Yeah.
you can, and it turns out the font is named Universe. Without the E at the end, but there was like a whole search party on my Discord, like going around, like, what is that font? We had like we took photos of our dad's record collections and shit, and like, what's this font? And we actually found it, and that's why the King's Chill record labels look like they do.
Yeah, this we know it's a good collective of nerds going on where it's like I love a good font hunt. You know, that takes me back.
I'm on the hunt
And
for
I'll
a
take
font I found on a gravestone. Right now, I just call it Classic Gravedigger. So
Okay.
That Discord is a magical place. There is
Right?
no topic you can ask a question about where you won't get a good answer, you know?
and so technical and so off the wall, or even just like, what should I have for breakfast today? It doesn't matter. It's just a great place.
Yeah.
I have no idea how that happened. Again, it's the whole thing of just surrounding myself with people who can sort of soak up or deflect my dumb and actually turn it into a great place to be. That's how the Discord sort of evolved around me.
I love the Discord because it's like nobody lets anything go there. Like they will get to the bottom of it. And sometimes I'll just retroactively read, you know, especially when you were doing a lot of like the discovering bugs and doing that kind of video series on debugging and digging through SCI Companion and stuff. Just retroactively reading you guys, like sending the hounds out basically with like, you know, the sniff of something was so much fun.
That was so much. Some of those people who like cracked the code and went spelunking in the code and all that. I mean, I took all the credit for it because I put the video together, but it was really their work that I was just piping out into onto YouTube. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The nerds in Nerd Central on the Discord are magical people, and they're fucking sadists as well.
Right.
That whole trip they have going with turning old device drivers on their heads, like the whole paint train thing was getting like old CGA drivers running on old DOS games. Like Pickle Dog, one of the moderators, actually wrote a CGA driver for Doom.
Wow.
For like proper vanilla DOS Doom. You can play that in
It's
4-color
so pretty.
CGA.
So
It's
pretty.
so good. Warm to my
That
heart.
paint train stuff is beautiful.
Oh boy, this is good shit here.
Sorry, derailing as I always do. Again, brain on autopilot.
No, there is no rail. That's not
No.
you. We never laid a
Yeah.
track out. We're just out
Not
here
at
in
all.
the desert having a good time.
Cool. It feels like the desert. God damn, it's warm in here.
So what are you guys' roles together as far as Era 47? Because I am curious, like, you know, what makes you guys a team? In other words, like, does one of you do one thing, or is it like a collaboration, or?
JPS, you have to take this one. I've been running my mouth for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. So we both do our own things on it. So as far as the full instruments, I played all the guitar, and Trolls does all of the drum work. But what happens is Trolls will do most of the hard work, and he'll take, you know, the midis and, you know, translate them into something workable, and he orchestrates them, you know, which is selecting the different instruments and stuff like that to be used, and he arranges them and does all the nitty gritty work there. Then he'll send off those individual tracks to me, and I will mix them, edit them, master them, and throw the guitar on there and stuff like that. And yeah, together it's what Trolls was talking about. You know, you always need to surround yourself with people that are good at what you're bad at, and we complement each other really well in that.
That was kind of Ken Williams' whole idea for Sierra, right?
Yeah,
Honestly.
yeah, exactly.
I
My old
can't do
singer
any of
say
it.
it all the time, you know, because he's a guitarist as well. But he's like, he goes, I got you in the band because you can do all the lead stuff and everything, and I got, you know, our drummer is really good at this and that, and it's just that way you complement each other rather than step on toes.
Right. And you just,
That's
John Paul, you handled the loofs, I would imagine, for Trolls when it came down to that.
Handle the what? Sorry, I got my thing down.
All the loofs, you know, all the complicated.
Yes, I do, and I've got to tone it down some because I don't want it skipping on the vinyl. It's always the most terrifying thing because, you know, if I'm doing it for a video game soundtrack or just something to put on YouTube, I can listen on my speakers here. I can go to my car and listen to it. You can't do that test with vinyl. You just have to wait the 6 months until they send trolls the test pressings, and then cross your fingers that it didn't screw everything up.
Oh,
wow, that stressed me out just listening to that, right? Because and you're really relatable with the car thing. Because I always use my car for the at least those final mixes. You're making sure the bass is nice and warm and surrounding, and I don't know what I would do without that.
Oh yeah, and that's a tip. I'm going to be the old guy here. For any of you young kids out there, always have some reference monitors where you know what things sound like on. You know, you go to your car, you know what music sounds like in your car. Music of the same genre that you're, ideally mixing and producing there. That way you can tell if it sounds messed up.
Right. That is brilliant advice.
Yeah. Mine is not the car. My car sounds terrible. There's an auxiliary. That's a hard word to say. Auxiliary. Fuck it. AUX lead coming out of my car, but for some reason, like there's some soldering in there that's not, or some isolation or something that in there that's not working. So whenever you plug anything into it, it goes, and even if you turn it down and it's terrible. And if you just turn the volume up on the source, like on your phone that you just plugged in, then it the signal is way too loud and it starts distorting and you get these awful clipping sounds. My car is not where I do my. In fact, for Error 47 and for most of the stuff that we've done, most of the stuff I have sent JPS, and this is why it's so good to have an actual professional in the band. Most of the stuff I do with the greatest sin of all. I mix on my headphones. You're not supposed to do that. That's bad. That's bad. Very, very bad. Get yourself good speakers. Never mix on headphones because headphones are not. You can't trust headphones. But I do, and I can comfortably do that now because I will just. At this point, I've stopped bothering to even level shit out properly. I just send. If you look at my project files, they're clipping. They're awful. They're messy, and I just send the stems to JPS, and he'll make sense of it. Which is
that's what we need for our podcast. They're so we're going to start sending. Yeah, exactly. We send it to you too, JPS. Is that you can just make it all make sense? Change the words too as you need to. I mean, if we say something wrong, that's great.
I actually I do some side work here, just for like local podcast people and stuff, and yeah, it got to the point where it's just I was, if I was getting it from the same people again, I wouldn't listen to the whole thing. I would just check a few spots and okay, this preset still works,
Right. Let's real quick. So the musician nerd, just wants to do like a kind of like a gear check with you guys. Like I was telling Anna before the show that John, I looked up you. So well, first I wanted to see the face, right? Like who am I talking to, kind of thing, as I always do. But I was like, I wanted to see the guitar you played because as somebody else, a fellow musician for long before the game stuff, really professionally anyway. I learned that you can tell a lot about people from the guitars they play, and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of curious to like check in and do kind of a gear check. Like I'll start with you, John.
This is going to get deep. This is going to get like psychoanalysis kind of thing. Okay, so you're
my setup as far as any live setting is super simple. I've got my first year 2001 John Petrucci Music Man, the custom one, and I haven't played a gig since they bought it without it.
That's the purple. I think it was purple guitar.
Yeah, it's got that two-tone purple-green thing going on.
Right.
Love that guitar. Never want for anything more after that one. And as far as an amp goes, again, live, I just go pretty much straight into my Marshall JVM head, and it works out super well.
You said JVM?
Yeah, JV as in Victor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a type of, I think about 10, 15 years ago, it was their latest model.
Is that
worked out real well. No, that one's it's full tube. It's Class
cool.
A.
Okay. Oh.
In fact, it was for any gear nerds listening, it was a 100-watt head, but a 100-watt tube head is just bonkers level loud. So I made it a 50-watt head.
Oh, nice. See, I haven't had a tube in a long time. Last one I had was the Silver Jubilee, and that had the little 50-100 switch on it, which was always cool.
Oh yeah. Those switches are nice.
Oh, that's cool. All right. So, and I think, so when I looked at the guitar, I'm like, that's a music man. So that means he's probably all the things that I'm not, in a good way, like in the way that I wish I was. Like, I was like, he's probably like studied classical, is a good engineer, like just really the musical
Technical.
equivalent
Dude
of
has
having
his
your
own
shit
music
together.
store.
Right.
The dude has his own store.
And I was always just the plays it too fast and loose, shoots from the hip kind of blues, like, blues player. Playing everything I'd always done was always off of feel, let's say. And it's just, it more like, I don't know, I guess if we were to make it overly deep or psychological, like a Les Paul kind of player, where it's like, well, those guitars make no sense. So it's probably just, just feeling it out, man, like more like that kind of thing. And then you look at a Music Man and you're like, that is a wise purchase.
I'll tell you, when I bought it, it was very much not a wise purchase. It cost me way too much money. Even back in 2001, it was almost $3,000. So,
Oh, gorgeous.
but no, I've never had an issue. I am, I do a lot of theory, a lot of technical stuff. I studied classical guitar in college, but one of the best guitarists I ever played with in a band was a guy who couldn't tell you what a C chord was, and it was a joy to play with him. We worked so well together, and he could blow me out of the water with his playing, So
Right.
It's all about, every individual person has a different approach, and there's 1.5 million different ways that are all perfectly valid. I found the way that works for me, and that's great, but there's a million other very valid ways.
Yeah, but it almost seems like you could split musicians into those two groups of like, just the fast and loose kind of, and I think I'm not sure if both sides are jealous of the other side, but that's probably about fair, because you see something in the technical player, or like the super free player, let's say, where it's just like, man, I wish I had a little bit of that, but instead I don't know how to think technically, or whatever the case. So that's pretty fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's so many times where I hear, whatever the new rock song on the radio is, I'm like, man, that's just 2 chords back and forth. Why can't I just, why do I have to make everything so fancy? Why don't I just do those 2 chords and write a good melody, So I do know that definitely jealous going one way.
Right, and I confirm the other for sure. Yeah, I mean, anytime I hear anything classical, or even especially like nylon string, like Latin, I'm like, oh man, I so wish I could do that. And classical players have that baked in. It's it's just being able to run minor scales like that and everything. But anyway, all right. So Trolls, what about you? So you're more like on the electronic side. So I think we might be switching more to like plugins, or are we doing synths, or what are we doing?
I'm just gonna roll off one thing that the two camps. I used to play in like dumb punk bands, cover bands when I was in high school and university as well. And it occurs to me, if you want to put people into two camps, you've either got the creatives or the gearheads. To be perfectly honest, it's very rare to find a combination of the two.
Right.
A person who knows their gear, but also has an incredible ear for composition and arrangement and all that stuff. We had 2 guitarists in the same cover band, and one of them was like a punk rock guitarist, 3 chords, off we go, let's bang some heads. And he was super good at keeping time, and he was really inventive. Like when I'd be behind the drum kit, and I'd go, "Hey, what about after the second chorus, we just drop everything, and then we come in on like the third hit," and he'd be like, "Yeah," and then first try we'd get it, and it was beautiful. And I'd usually be the one who messed that up. Yeah, so everything we did was like super dynamic and really fun.
Dynamic,
and then we had the other guy who could run circles around John Petrucci. Like he could just run his fingers up and down that fretboard like nothing else. But that's all he did. Like when we were in the rehearsal space, that's all he did. He just run scales. He'd just sit there and practice running scales. So of course he was brilliant at it. It sounded amazing, and we were like, dude, maybe we should put that into a solo. And he's like, no, I'd have to write the solo down. It's like, write your solo down? What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
He could not compose a riff to save his life. He could not. He could run the scales. He could do all the technical stuff. He had amps and guitars. Spent all his money on all this gear because he loved the gear and he loved the technical side and he was like a mathematician about it. But he could not write a fucking riff to save his life. And the other guy just had a Praxis, like it was like a suitcase. Like he just picked it up, rolled it in, plugged it in. It sounded like absolute garbage. It even had a hole in the speaker. It's like really punk rock shit. And it just sounded balls out fucking amazing when he played.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no,
So
that is more or less, yeah, you're laying out the two camps as you put it perfectly. Yeah, and it's always fascinated me, and because I've always wanted. I guess it's easy to look at somebody shredding and be like, I wish I could just do that. Like that'd be a cool thing to have in my toolbox, but just doesn't go along with the personality. Like you can't. Being in the camp that I'm in, like you can't even look at the spelled out tablature and be like, okay, let's learn this now. It's like the brain just immediately loses focus. Like I don't want to do this. This is an exercise.
And that's why I'm really happy that JPS is in the band, because I think JPS, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think JPS is one of those rare breeds who is a gearhead, who knows his shit. He has, like I said, he has his own music store in Chicago, where he actually sells gear and advises people on what to buy and all that sort of shit. But he also, I don't usually tell him how to play the stuff that we do in Error 47. I do like scratch guitars with MIDI, sorry, whatever. Like this is where I want the guitar to come in. This is roughly what I want it to sound like. And he just runs with it. I don't. And every once in a while we just go, usually I go, can you turn it up? But that's about it, really.
He's like, I need headspace.
I tend to be the guy who's like, no, it has to be gnarlier, it has to be more evil, it has to sound bigger and stuff. And JPS is like, well, then you can't hear the actual chords. So
you're both right.
But anyway,
that's generally the gist of it for sure. Trolls is my strong suit is not in writing like rhythm riffs. I do a lot of lead stuff that I think I'm pretty decent at. So a lot of the scratch MIDI guitar stuff, I just kind of try to emulate that. And sometimes because the MIDI stuff is just on a keyboard, doesn't take into account some of the practical limitations of how the guitar is actually played. So it's kind of fun to have to translate the MIDI guitar into actual guitar. That can be kind of a fun challenge from time to time.
My expertise with the guitar is it starts and stops with power chords. That's why the guitar I have in my closet is this old banger that my old punk rock guitar player gave me 20 years ago, and I only recently changed the strings. It only has 2 strings on it.
That's punk rock.
It has an E and an A string, and the E string is tuned to D. So that's the extent of my abilities. But yeah, so it is fun. Usually JPS is right. When the rhythm guitar thing is usually because it's industrial rock. Usually, if you've listened to a Frontline Assembly circa mid 1996, you know what kind of industrial metal guitar sounds like. It's a lot of chucking. So there's not a lot of like leeway into let's get fancy with this. But the lead stuff, the guitar solos things, that's what I was getting at. Usually, I'll write something in that's most of the time is actually just the lead that's from the original MIDI of whatever we're reconstructing, in this case the Seventh Guest. There's like a piano solo in there, and I'm going to go, this is going to sound awesome as a guitar solo, and send it off to JPS, and he comes back with this like oodles and noodles, and he's going up and down the fret, slides and everything, and I'm like, chef's kisses, let's run with it.
Oh, that's great. Like a symbiosis.
It's going to be too wanky.
I love wanky.
There's something interesting about the industrial guitar sound because it's so. I guess my influence or half my background is all Slash centric. Like he's the reason I picked up a guitar. So it's part of me like really loves like the root of blues playing and like a great tone and tube amps and neck pickups and ladies tone or whatever like Clapton would do with the tone all the way down on the rhythm. But the other part of me was like in the Tom Morello camp, which was like having like a disregard for the tradition of the instrument. And to where I'm going with this is like industrial rock always had that, or I liked that when it had this blurred line between guitar and digitized sound. And so like it almost like served the guitars well to sound, I don't want to say crappy, but like you didn't need a tube amp, I would is what I'm getting at for some of like the cool, and not for industrial rock because I don't have the I don't have the right to say that, let's just say, but for trying to get like a untraditional sound from the guitar, like it's no longer about like the tone anymore. It's just about like kind of fucking with it or finding like a broken pedal.
Oh, it's absolutely. I mean, JPS actually taught me what the industrial guitar sound is. It's a dude who plugs his guitar straight into the mixing board and just turns it all the way up, and that's it. No, I actually didn't answer your original question, so let me just answer both of them. So, my background is not in electronics per se, although technically by necessity it is. When I was a kid, I used to instead of whatever people in my grade school were listening to, I was listening to synthesizer music. Your Vangelis, Jean-Michel Jarre,
Beautiful.
Jan Hammer, that kind of shit, which always weirded people. I was like, "Why are you listening to that?"
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
very
know.
relatable.
And I looked at the first record that actually got me interested in playing music was I went through my dad's record collection and I played Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield.
Wow,
And
yes, me too.
it's my absolute favorite record of all time, I think. And I look at the back of it and it says Mike Oldfield plays all of this shit. And I was like, how? How the fuck? How many hands does he have? It turns out you can overdub. I didn't know that. So when I decide, okay, I want to make my own music, does that mean I have to start learning an instrument? Because I don't think I'd be very good at that. And luckily, this was around the time when trackers, like mod trackers, were becoming a thing.
Right.
So I got Scream Tracker 2 for my 386 at the time. I didn't have a sound card, so it was all PC speaker. You had 4 channels of, let's say, digital sound, but it really was, if you put your mouth to a cardboard tube and just go, that's how it sounded. And so I got started with mod tracker stuff, and that means I don't have a formal education in anything music related. The only bits of music theory I've been able to pick up is from just necessity. I usually say I just roll my head on the keyboard and stuff comes out, but that is actually what happens. I know when I'm sitting in front of a keyboard or a piano that if I hold down these 2 keys, it sounds good, but if I hold down these 2 keys, it sounds awful. So that's how I know chords. And then from getting into like actually playing in bands as a teenager and stuff like that, I had to sort of get to grips with, oh, this is what a time signature is. Oh, okay, so that's actually a C major and that's a C minor. Okay, I can't read sheet music. I can't read tablatures at all. Tablatures is like it's like hieroglyphics to me. But I know from, like, if I really concentrate, I can go, okay, so this is an inverted A minor. I don't know. I'm just holding down 3 keys and it sounds cool. That kind of stuff. And that's still what happens today. In fact, I was rearranging one of the Seventh Guest tracks the other day, and it was one of those tracks from the 11th Hour, actually, that has this soft arpeggio that runs through it, and it goes over like 4 octaves, really soft. It's the one that plays when you're trying to solve one of the puzzles. It's called Infernal Melody, which, by the way, there's a whole story about that. JPS will have to tell you about how fucking cursed that track is. But anyway, so it has this wonderful arpeggio running all the way through it, and I wanted to have a guitar playing the chords behind it. But since it was an arpeggio, I couldn't just look at the notes because they were all like jumbled together. So I couldn't figure out what fucking chord this was. So I had to, and this is true, open a tab in my browser, go Google chord identifier, and go and just plot in, okay, these are the notes. This is probably the chord it is. And then I sit down with my MIDI keyboard and go C, A, F sharp, that's a bit weird. Okay, let's go to a G, that's even weirder. Okay, that can't be it. And then, just trial and error this shit out. So that's so yes. And the reason I picked up the drums is because you don't have to learn musical theory to play drums. You don't even have to tune your fucking instrument at every practice. You just sit down and you bash shit out. Drums appeal to me. And time signatures are fun because even though, I mean, when I was a teenager or in my early 20s and you used to go to parties and get drunk and listen to metal music and stuff like that, me and my friends, we'd sit around and pretend we were really smart and go, oh, okay, so this Tool song, it starts out in 7/8 and then it goes into 8/8 and 6/8 and then it goes into 9/8. Could you tell when it switched? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, that kind of thing. But we were just like bullshitting. I mean, if you tell a drummer, okay, this song is in 7/8 and they go, oh, that's the thing where it's missing a beat at the end. Right, let's go. So, I mean, that's the extent of musical theory I need. So, yes, technically, I'm in the electronics department, but it's by necessity. It's because I don't know musical theory very well.
I relate a lot to your coming of age musical theory stories where it's like, oh, so that's an A sharp. And I just remember when I finally started having the chords worked out, the first thing I could think of was how that Simpsons episode with the B sharps was wrong. I'm like, there is no B sharp.
Now, here's the most fucked up thing. In Danish music theory, it's not called a B. A B in Danish music or European music theory is actually the note that North Americans would refer to as B flat. We call that a B, and the B is an H. And there's apparently the story about a European monk who was copying sheet music from somewhere overseas, like back in medieval times, and his handwriting was so bad that his B's turned into H's. But if you tell a European musician, play a B or play a B flat or whatever, they will go, oh, so he means like a B flat. Then you have to tell him it's an H.
Right.
Wow.
As soon as they play, like, hey, I think you need to tune a little bit. You're a little flat there.
And here's the thing. I mean, and then I get to high school and I get really arrogant and I'm going to go, okay, so there's an elective course on music. Yeah, I want to be a musician. I want to do music stuff. And it was a complete mistake. It was one of the classes I flunked the hardest. And one of the things was, since I'd grown up on mod trackers were written by people from North America. Actually, Scream Tracker was written by Finnish people, but they kept the North American music theory. So a B was a B, and a B flat was a B flat, instead of a H and a B. So when I got into music theory, one of the first crash courses I had was that a B is not a B, a B is an H. And I was like, that fucked with my head. And then they start saying, okay, now draw a G clef. I'm like, what the fuck is a clef? Oh, it's the squiggly thing. Oh, yeah. And one of the first assignments I handed in, I swapped around. JPS is going to have a fucking field day with this. I swapped around the bass clef and this G clef. So the bass clef was on top and the G clef was down below. And he's like, this isn't sheet music. This is a sobriety test. What the fuck are you doing? Actual words from my music teacher. This is a sobriety test.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I'm going to have to remember that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the industrial. Okay, so now the industrial metal guitar is so my go-to type of music is I don't really care what amp it's going through or what they've done to it. I just like my guitars loud and crushing. If I put on headphones, I want the guitar to feel like it's squeezing my head.
Right.
I want that big. If I don't know if you're familiar with a band called Dead Sea, which was a sort of early 2000s vanity project by one of Cher's sons. Actually, he started this sort of weird synth rock metal thing. The guitar sound in that just sounds like a fucking buzzsaw drilling into your ears, and I'm like, this is good. I like this. Or the guitar sound from let's pick an example someone actually knows. Quake 3 was written by Sonic Mayhem. Sonic Mayhem have this really aggressive sounding, like you can barely tell that it's a guitar. It just sounds like a building collapsing around you. That's the sort of guitar I like. And that's where JPS usually pushes back and says, let's not do that, because you can't make out any other instrument if we have that sort of guitar in there.
Well, that leads me to...
Track. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. And that leads me to ask, before we get into Haunted Tracks and everything else, so what is the current project? What is Soups on and what's going on? And how did you guys get into doing this? You must have thrown out some emails, and how did this whole project come to be?
JPS, you're up. I've been talking my mouth off again.
So,
I blacked out.
I don't remember what the initial catalyst was. But I know we had just recently come off doing the last album, CDOS Run, which was a collection of just really obscure DOS game music, which I thought was a great record. But
it is a lot of fun.
It definitely bombed in the crowdfunding category. So we were a little gun shy, and Trolls had the idea because the Soups On's been a meme on his Discord and everything for years, and all the music it's been just talked about at great length. What if we did a seventh guest thing, and then all of a sudden it started spiraling. It's let's see if we can get some extra musicians in here to bolster us up, and again, like we always talk about, fill in the spots where we're not strong at. Things like live violin, live vocals, stuff like that,
bass.
and live bass. Excuse me, yes, live bass.
C Does Run had no live bass whatsoever.
Yeah. But then Trolls, I think at that point I think we did a couple tracks first, but then you emailed George. Is that how that worked? Or did you email him first?
The catalyst, as you say, was absolute hubris on my part. We were batting around ideas for what to do next, and we were either going to do C Does Run 2, which we were very, like you say, gun shy about, because if no one really wanted the first one, why would we do a second one? Even though we had like a full track list of tunes that we were going to go, this is going to sound great. We were like, we'd basically be making it for ourselves. Which is also cool. There's nothing wrong with that, but we like to get our shit on vinyl. That's like my main motivation for doing all of this. It's just I want vinyls of my own shit. So if no one wanted the first C Does Run on vinyl, then they probably don't want the second one either. So anyway, so out of complete hubris, the conversation went, okay, so 10 tracks from different obscure DOS games is not setting the world on fire. Let's find out why. Oh, it's probably because just having one track from a game in like a compilation, like a collection of stuff, turns people off in the sense that, it's not tied to any one franchise. Like all the ones that we've been successful with is like, now we're doing a Duke Nukem record. Now we're doing a King's Quest record. Now we're doing that kind of stuff, a Gabriel Knight record. And if you have like a compilation of stuff, then people are like really interested in maybe one or two tracks, but they're like, you know what, that really doesn't really light my shit on fire. So we're like, okay, let's tie ourselves into one franchise or one game. Let's go back to that because that seems to work. And here's where the hubris comes in. I don't think we did any tests or anything to begin with. We were just like, what games would be fun? And I said Seventh Guest, and And he said, okay, that's one idea, sure. And I went off and I emailed George Sanger, the composer for Seventh Guest and 11th Hour. I had talked to him once before on Roberta and you guys' live stream, the composer's live stream, which I believe Alistair
he set that
organized. Yeah, which was great fun. George wasn't actually part of the actual live stream, but he came in at like the pre-show thing just to say hi to everyone, and I started gushing at him because Seventh Guest, the fucking soundtrack is awesome. It was the first, the Seventh Guest was the first thing I ever learned to play on the piano because of that stupid fucking puzzle in the game where you have to play it Simon Says style, and he was like, that stupid fucking puzzle, I can't even beat it, and I wrote the stupid fucking music. Because it does take so fucking long. Anyway, so hubris is, hi, you met me once and I would not stop talking. Would you mind if we did an entire album of your music? And he's like, yeah, we could probably work something out. I sent him a link to like Synths of the Fathers and Duke Dance Party. Like, this is what we've done in the past. So I think he was expecting us to do like an electronic version of it. Not knowing that we'd also done C Does Run, which was more industrial rock, and that's where our hearts were going. But he was like, "Yeah, okay, yeah," because he's and this is not just because he let us do it. I mean, he's a super kind-hearted person who is really like, he loves it when people. He's kind of like Robert Holmes in that regard, because he was also like super into what we were doing, even though we were completely mangling his original stuff. Like we were just doing weird shit to it, honestly. But he was like really into it. Just, yeah. Because musician is a musician. Like you listen to a different version of a track, and you kind of go, okay, that's interesting what they're doing there. Yeah. So George was the same. He was like, I can that could be interesting, and also it might get people to like go back to my Bandcamp and pick up the official soundtracks, which I have released over there. Insert plug here, by the way, the Fat Man and Team Fat.bandcamp.com. If you want the actual official soundtracks, go there. He's remastered and recorded them, and they're available on his Bandcamp page. It's good shit. But yeah, so he was actually on board, and then I went back to JPS and said, remember those ideas we had batting around? Yeah, we're doing Seventh Guest. But that's yeah. So and that's and the running joke became, okay, so what are we going to do to Seventh Guest? We're not going to do like we're not going to do like Synths of the Fathers, Duke Nukem Dance Party kind of thing to it, because we just came off C Does Run, and one of the reasons why we did that was because I really wanted to hear more of JPS's guitar playing, because he's a fucking amazing guitar player and I'm not, and there isn't a lot of guitar on the Duke Nukem vinyl, or he played a bit of guitar on the Gabriel Knight vinyl, but that was still really very electronic stuff. And I really wanted to hear more of his guitar, and I just gotten a drum kit, like an electronic drum kit, a Nitro Mesh drum kit. Which there's barely any room for in my room anyway. But so we were like, okay, live drums, live guitars. Let's go all in on this shit, and let's do the same thing to the Seventh Guest and the 11th Hour. So the running joke became, okay, so if we're going to do a rock version of the Seventh Guest with our musical influences, let's do Seventh Guest as if performed by Paradise Lost or Typo Negative, because it's gothic, so it's gothic rock, right? Yeah, let's do that. Which, of course, it sounds nothing like, but that was the running joke anyway.
Yeah, I always we definitely we went into it with that mindset, but it comes out sounding nothing like that. As much as those bands are great, it's like when you see a random band and they say our influences are Pink Floyd and Metallica. It's like, no, those are the bands you like.
Right.
You sound like that. You sound like Leonard Skinner, but
I mean, it sounds like what we did on C Does Run.
Right.
Basically, it's a lot of electronic. It starts with the electronic stuff, and then eventually a guitar comes in, and some live drums come in, and that's And someone had his hand on the volume knob for the guitar, and there's the other dude's hand is like pushing down on that first hand. It's just, nope, stop it.
Give it a little shoot.
Well, this is what I love about talking with. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to say real quick. I think one of the great things for doing an album like this with the full soundtrack rather than pulling out the bits and pieces from other soundtracks, especially with something as as expertly done as the Seventh Guest and 11th Hour soundtracks, is you get to do cool things like carry some of the themes throughout the various songs. There's probably just a handful of main themes that are used in all of the various tracks, and it's kind of fun to get a new track from Trolls and be able to play the same notes but in a completely different fashion, and it really ties the whole album together.
Much like the Lebowski's rug. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
The carpet of the album. Sorry.
And the Fat Man does this thing with both of those original soundtracks, is he uses a lot of leitmotifs. Every one of the 6 guests in the Seventh Guest has their own instrument. If you listen to it, like Martine Burton has a muted trumpet, Edward Knox has an oboe. I think Hamilton Temple, the magician dude, that's like a wind-up box, like one of those like monkey dances on a box kind of thing. That's his musical instrument, and they also all have their individual theme. And then there's the overarching theme, which is the theme called The Game, which is the iconic Seventh Guest that thing. So every time something interesting happens, it's always the same theme, but it's played by a different instrument. That's how the official soundtrack works. So what we did was, what we ended up having was like a bunch of MIDI files with basically the same theme played on different instruments, and we're like, we don't have an oboe. So it's up to the arrangement to tell the story now. Now it's up to the way JPS plays the guitar and the way I play the drums and the way, because for instance, like Martine Burton's theme, Bedspread, which is a tango with a muted trumpet that basically just plays the Seventh Guest theme, but now it's a tango. And we're like, fuck, how do we do a tango in industrial rock? I know, let's add a breakbeat. Let's add, we threw in drum and bass drum samples, so it starts out sounding like fucking Chasing Status or Pendulum or something, and then it goes into like full-on double tempo madness drums, and poor JPS just has to play the same fucking chugging rhythm guitar over it because it's just too. There's the thing, it's just 2 fucking chords throughout the whole thing. And then you get to do lead guitar stuff, obviously, but so that's the fun part. That is taking, trying to tell the story with the leitmotifs that were done with different instruments instead of each person having a different like motif, and try to make them differentiate enough through different arrangements.
It makes me think of Peter and the Wolf a little bit. Each one of the characters in Peter and the Wolf is represented by a different instrument and a different little theme, if you've heard of that story.
Really? 0 for 3? Nobody? None of us?
No. I mean, I heard that David Bowie did an audiobook of Peter and the Wolf.
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
want to hear
it's
that.
An olive
it's
branch for you. See, one of us
there
heard of
you
it,
go.
kind of.
I'll
Yeah.
take it. I'll take it. But yeah, anyways, that's what it reminded me. But you know what? That is the cool thing, and that's why I was so excited to talk about this with you guys, because you guys take an idea like out of thin air. Like this is just an idea. This is something that doesn't exist, and then all of a sudden you gather the people around, you make the project happen, you do it. You have a tangible vinyl in your hands. In the end, I've got a few of your tangible vinyls right here with me, and it's just that's amazing in a world where everybody is so full of like blah 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 talk. Like whatever you do know or you don't know, you bring the people around, and you guys are just making it happen. So thank you.
No, thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
Gives me
that,
faith here.
that's that's what I mean. The reason why we started doing vinyls in the first place is because I went to PAX a few years ago and did moderated one of the adventure game panels for Roberta,
I was there.
which was great. Yes, you were. It was great fun. And then I went by the I Am 8-Bit booth and saw they had like vinyl soundtracks for games. And me
did.
again, I don't pay attention to what happens in the world. So I was like, do game soundtracks on vinyl? Is that a thing?
And didn't
I
you
came
pick up
home
a Grim Fandango or something on that trip?
Yes. I got a
Yeah.
Grim Fandango, and I picked up a Doki Doki Literature Club vinyl, if you can believe it.
That's beautiful.
It's a great game. I'm going to defend
is.
that game to the hilt.
It's me too. I'm in there.
It wasn't spoiled for
Probably
me. I loved it.
No.
Probably should have gotten the Undertale vinyl, but I didn't, and now it's
Yeah,
really expensive.
aw.
But
It
anyway,
is.
so I came home and thought, if they get Grim Fandango on vinyl, why don't we have Space Quest on? Again,
Right?
I gotta say, this is before I knew that game soundtracks on vinyl was like a fucking booming business. I've since talked to one of the a guy who lives here in Denmark, in Copenhagen, who has one of the biggest, if not the biggest, collection of game soundtracks on vinyl in the world. And I went by his apartment and did a video with him.
Yeah.
And it's just, Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, there's a lot of it. I didn't know that at the time. So I just came home and went, Space Quest on vinyl. Hey, let's do that. No one else is doing it. So I guess I'm going to do it. So I just sat down and did it. And it wasn't terribly professional. But it was just, let's just see if this has legs. Do Space Quest 4. And luckily, I know Ken Allen, the guy who composed the soundtrack for Space Quest 4, and he was like, he thought it was a great idea. I've always wanted my soundtrack on vinyl. He said, so let's do this. And that's
See,
what
I
happened.
found everybody to be so darn approachable. Whenever I've gotten a hold of anybody, from Ken Allen to the Coles to anybody else, they're just like, oh, wow, cool. You like it? I liked doing it. Let's talk. Let's make things happen. Like, I have never found, like, you ever feel like you don't want to meet your heroes because it's just going to be disappointing? And it's like all of these people, the people from the back of the boxes that I have admired since I was a little kid, I'm meeting them in real life, and they're even cooler than I thought they would be, like, and approachable.
Not one of them has been a letdown. Sorry, go ahead, Trolls. Do you have a letdown one?
No, absolutely not. I was going to say Ken Allen is one of the sweetest. I mean, I like I said, I grew up. Space Quest was my favorite game. 14 years old. Space Quest 4 boots up. I hear that fanfare open up for the first time, and it says music by Ken Allen and Mark Siebert. I'm like, fucking hell, those dudes are brilliant. They're geniuses. And I just loved his music. I would like sit and listen to the format countdown. I pause the game on just so I can hear that loop over and over and over and over again. I just fucking love that. And then if you told me that 14-year-old who sat there and listened to that fucking thing on loop for hours and hours, that one day when you're like out of college and you live in a one-room apartment with your wife, the person who wrote that piece of music will be sitting on your couch drinking a bottle of scotch and sleeping on your couch, I would have shat my pants on the spot.
Yeah.
Right?
But he did.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
That's a great
just came and
record
hang out.
screech. You're probably wondering how I got here kind of break.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I haven't had a scotch with George Sanger or anything. I've never actually met him in real life, but he has just been such a great support. He's been very, very supportive every time I've done something to one of the tracks. And it's been a little like, oh, can I get away with this? This is, I mean, I told him we were going to fuck with this stuff, but this might be too much of a fucking.
I don't know if it's consensual anymore.
We're not really fucking it at this point. We're more like beating it up. So So I'd send it to him. For instance, there's that music that plays in the finale of the Seventh Guest. Spoiler: when you get up to the room at the attic, and Tad has this big fight with Stoff, and Stoff starts vomiting all over the place for some reason and turns into a snake, and all of that. And there's this music that runs under it, and it's timed to the FMV that's playing. And we turned that into a fucking 90s EDM dance club song that, for some reason, gets and after the EDM thing, it has a break, and then it turns into Mr. Bungle, like this fucking circus rock music, and still, like, the tempo is just it's keeping up with whatever's happening on screen, and I felt like, okay, it just kind of needs a break. It needs to sort of like calm down. For instance, it's first of all, it's way too short, so it needs to be like an overarching thing. It needs to have a little break so we can speed things back up and go full on, for the ending. So I, and this is very hard to say, I actually went in and wrote some stuff myself. I inserted myself into that tune. Like, I wrote a little bridge. I tried to emulate, the style but I'm not a musician. So me sitting down and actually writing new stuff to inject into whatever he's done, that was like, okay, I am overstepping my boundaries here. This is terrible. So I sent him the track, and I went, yeah, you're probably not going to like this, but here it is. And if you're okay with this, we're going to run with it. And he was like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? This is great. And I'm like, okay. So he's been very, very supportive, I have to say. And John liked playing the guitar on that one, because apparently it's all Phrygian scales, and I have no idea what that means, but he loved it.
Yeah, he's George Singer. For any theory nerds out there, he's a big fan of, at least on this soundtrack, there's a whole lot of Phrygian stuff, which just lends itself so beautifully to industrial rock, because a lot of the industrial songs that you can picture in your head are Phrygian. So you just don't see it very often. So it worked out real nice. And George Singer, he's been just such an amazingly kind and generous person with all of this, where he just seems to be having a good old time with us, just absolutely changing, at sometimes very fundamental levels, his music. And he's been nothing but great doing that. He did that video for us just to help promote it on the Kickstarter, and it's just it's just a treat to have him be so supportive.
John, you might have to correct me here, but is Phrygian like the gypsy sounding scale? Like kind of Spanishy vibe to it?
Yeah, kind of. So the long story short is, to put it, if you want to put it in guitar terms, if you're starting the scale, the very next note is the next fret. So I think there's another mode that's like that too, but the Phrygian one, it gives like an E, then the next note is
minor
an F.
kind of vibe.
Just that. What's that?
Kind of like a minor vibe, like a not like a darkness, like a little bit of a sadness or a drama, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. They call it a flat 2. It's got a flat 2 in it, and it's definitely one of the modes that leans minor for sure.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, Seventh Guest is full of like really sad stuff, because they're ghosts, they're dead, and they've been hoodwinked, and none of them are really nice people except for Eleanor and Hamilton. But Hamilton keeps looking over his shoulder at doors that aren't there. So, so yeah. I mean, the Seventh Guest has a lot of it. The funny thing about the Seventh Guest soundtracks, and especially 11th Hour, is how far they go in terms of not just underscoring what's happening in the game, but also just taking chances. Usually you would have, okay, it's a horror game, so we're going to do horror music. You're going to have the psycho thing where you have a C and a B next to each other and just hit that periodically and just do creepy shit. But no, George Sanger decided, you know what, this person needs a tango, and this person needs this sort of circus music going on. And 11th Hour is even wilder. Like, 11th Hour is this mid-90s gritty, quote-unquote modern, you're walking through the decrepit house. Everything's a bit more, there's a few more tits and a few more, everything's got to be a little more edgy in a way. Like, so for better or worse, mostly worse. But so his take on that is to go, okay, it's gritty, it's dark, it's got titty, it's got all the things, it's trying to be edgy and stuff. You know what this needs? Hawaiian guitar, maybe some jazz. Let's do jazz. It's like, what, really? So we're ending up having to, for the 11th hour bit, there's going to be a whole medley of jazzy stuff. And I have no idea how that's going to sound when it comes out as industrial jazz. I've never even heard of that, but we'll see.
Amazing. So what is this cursed track that you guys have brought up? What's going on with it here? Are we even going to get it then? And if we listen to it, will we survive? What's happening?
It is going in. The amount of hours we spent on that fucking thing. It's called Infernal Melody, and it fucking lives up to its name. Holy shit. First of all, okay, from my perspective, just doing the arrangement, we're not even done with it. Now, here's the thing: this has a killer punchline. But okay, so I load the thing in. I load in the MIDI file from the game because that's where it all starts. I take the original MIDI file and then I rearrange that, and then I start thinking, okay, so what can I do to fuck with this thing? So I load everything in, and the first thing I have to do is figure out what BPM it is, what tempo are we talking about. Turns out that whole arpeggio thing I was mentioning earlier, that big luscious arpeggio, is played on a harp. And it goes all the way over the scales and all that, is not played to a click at all. He sat down and played that on a fucking keyboard without a click. So first of all, I have to grid all this shit. I have to take all these massive arpeggios and grid them into some sort of workable BPM. Takes forever. Okay, next up, there's a middle bit. After it's done with all this sweet arpeggio in 3/4 time, waltz tempo, 3/4 time. Beautiful, very nice, very luscious. Again, it has a break. It switches to 4/4 and a completely different tempo. And which is mercifully actually played to a click. But that means you have to tell your DAW to, okay, now we have to get into a different tempo and a different time signature. Fine, we get that working. Finally, get the whole thing sort of arranged. I start because workflow usually is I'll arrange the tune pretty much as it is in the game, and then I'll do a few things to it, and then I'll send it to JPS, and then we'll sort of talk back and forth like what would be cool to do with this thing? What would be interesting? Sometimes I just run with it. Like I have like a quote unquote great idea in my head, I just run with it and I send him something completely batshit, and he goes fine. But with this one, I arranged the whole thing because it was cursed already to begin with, and on the evening I was going to send him all of this stuff right before I went in to export the stuff and send it to JPS. The whole project goes silent. As in completely silent. You press space to actually play something, nothing comes out of the speakers. I can see the little meters moving, but nothing is coming out. And I'm like, that's weird. Okay, let's just, it's probably an audio device thing. Let's go in and reset the audio device. Let's pick a different audio device. Let's turn the volume up. Did I turn the volume down? Is there something wrong? Are my speakers unplugged? All this stuff. Nothing. I load up a different project. Everything plays fine. So, okay, so this project is cursed. But I can still export the stems, the individual stems. So JPS can import those and put them in his stuff and have it come out sounding good. So he does. I have a completely silent project, but he has stems that he can actually work with. And he puts it all together, sends it to me. JPS works really fast, so I have it in the morning, where, wise. So he works when I sleep and vice versa. I get it in the morning. I listen to it on my morning cigarette break, and it's just, what the fuck is this mess? The violin comes in at the wrong place. Everything is off kilter. Something keeps going. It's not supposed to. What's that echo? What the fuck is going on? and we message each other and go, yeah, it's cursed. Yeah, it's cursed. So later that evening, I have my kid in the bedroom. He's watching a video on one of the monitors I have, and I'm over on the other monitor going, what is wrong with this fucking project file? I go through it. I finally managed to work out what it is. It's one of the send buses that have been soloed. In the DAW I use, the solo and mute buttons are all in the same place except when you do buses. For some reason, they've moved the buttons over. So I thought I'd gone through all the tracks and muted and unmuted and soloed and unsoloed everything except for the fucking buses. So okay, so one of the buses was soloed. Fine, so it's not totally cursed. I go in and I listen back to it, and all of the different tempo changes, time signature changes that I put in, they're still there, They've just decided to take a break. They're not going to fucking do anything. So again, all the stems, the intro sounds fine, but after the first minute and a half, everything gets off tempo and everything is not gridded anymore. And everything just sounds like a fucking mess. So I sit down and try to work out why it is, and then just like, nope, fuck it. I'm just going to put in new tempo, just new flags, new tempo changes, new time signatures. Luckily, I know what they are and where they're supposed to start and all that. So everything slots back into grid. And yeah, finally we've got a working project file. It actually plays. It actually is gridded now. Everything's fine. Control S, mix to stems, send them to JPS. He gets, he mixes it, returns it the next morning. I listen to it on my cigarette smoking break, and I go, this is boring. This is dull. Nothing's happening. We spent all this time on this fucking tune, and it's dull. We need to do something. And that's where we're at currently with Infernal Melody. So finally it works, but it's dull. So we need to do something to it.
Oh God, that's rough. Yeah, because I imagine you've already. Well, I was gonna say probably already heard it a million times trying to fix it, but it sounds like a lot of the problem was a silent problem.
The silent problem was, and the tempo flags not working. I still don't know what the fuck was up with that. But yeah, that first mix, and JPS is such a nice guy. Like when he hands something back, I think he wrote something like, so here's a jumping off point. Like, here's a start. Like, instead of just coming right out and saying, this sounds cursed again. But it sounded terrible.
It gives me enough to start getting the template for everything going.
Yeah, but I was like really.
And it's funny that we're talking about it right now, because I was planning on working on that today, and you're like, "Oh wait, we've got this podcast to do." It's like, "Well, clear the schedule."
Oops, sorry.
First continues.
That's okay. There's always tomorrow.
But I was like really worried. Sometimes when I send you stuff that doesn't really work or has like a drum track that I forgot to quantize or something, I'm like super worried. When you send stuff back, you never tell me. So I'm like super worried that you think this is the level he's at, isn't it? Like he actually thinks this sounds good. Like he actually thinks there's no problem with this. And this one was like borked. It was like fucked backwards into existence. It was super awful. And I imagine you listen to that and go, okay, he's lost it, but I'm going to keep a straight face.
No, with Infernal Melody, it was most definitely, it's hard to explain, but it was obvious that there was issues with the session going on. When you do this enough, you start to recognize what's the session being goofy and what's, possibly a ill thought out idea.
Are you? I'm just a nerdy question. Are you guys using the same DAW? Does that complicate things? No. Okay, now I need to know which ones you're using.
Mixcraft?
I'm using Mixcraft, not from choice. Ironically, a company a few years back called Giggle Horse Games said we'd like you to compose the music for our adventure game Absolute Zero that we've been working on. It's coming out like in a few months, and it hasn't come out yet, but it looks really, really good. And I said I'd love to, but I don't actually have a DAW. At the time, this was before King's Chill. This was before the Space Quest reorchestration vinyls. This is many, many years ago. So at the time, I was working on a hushed voice, a pirated version of Ableton 6 or 7, I think. That's just, for shits and giggles. I didn't actually, put out anything with that. I was just playing around, and Ableton's like really expensive. So I said, I told Giggle Horse, you know what? I've been using Ableton a bit, and the industrial band I was in, I was a teenager. The dude who did all the programming, he used Ableton as well. So that's where I picked it up and learned it. And they go, that's really expensive. We're going to get you Mixcraft. And it's like, I've never used Mixcraft. It's like, nah, it's probably fine. A DAW is a DAW, isn't it? So I kind of had to like relearn how to walk and talk with Mixcraft, and I think I've gotten the hang of it. Now JPS uses, not that Mixcraft isn't professional regular stuff, but it's very rarely mentioned in the same breath as Logic or Pro Tools or Ableton Live. But JPS is all over the professional shit.
Yeah, I've been using Cakewalk and Sonar for over 20 years at this point, and and I love it. It's again, to anyone out there listening, if you want, and it's right now it's free, but they're going to start charging for it again soon. But yeah, no, I love that software, and it does create kind of unique problems because Cakewalk is very similar. Your Cubase and Logic and all that stuff. But Mixcraft is really its own thing, and a lot of the terminology and the settings and how it's done don't really carry over. So, if Trolls is having an issue, I have difficulty trying to visualize it and try to help out, try to figure out what's going on, because things are very different between the two pieces of software. I think that's why we do solely, when we're transferring back and forth, it's just the audio files, because audio is universal. You just send the audio track, you can load it into anything.
That's it. That's why I always mix it down to stems and send that. I never send a project file. I don't even know what plugins JPS has, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't know what plugins I have, and it doesn't really matter in the end because everything we do is just audio. It's basically like being in a rehearsal space and someone plugs in their shit and someone else plugs in their shit, and then they jam away until something comes out. We don't know each other's gear very well, but yeah, Mixcraft is. I mean, I've come to love it, but it has some quirks. For one thing, whenever you load in a VST that has an ARP, as in something that's supposed to line up with the BPM, sure, it'll play fine when you're actually working in the project file. But if you bounce that into stems or into a WAV file, you have like a 50-50 chance that VST will suddenly shit the bed and decide, I'm now in a different tempo. Have fun with this.
It's so gaslighty.
Yeah, exactly. And there was the time when we did the Space Quest 1 movie soundtrack, and I was just, I had to learn this the hard way, because I just, send stems. I mix down to stems. Everything sounds fine in the project file. Let's mix it down to stems, send it off to people who are going to mix this and make it sound good. That would be JPS, Brandon Bloom, and JBH over the Discord. They were mixing this stuff. All three of them just went, is this supposed to sound like that? And I had to go in and play the project file, and everything sounded fine. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And they'd send me like a test bounce, and I go, what the fuck is that? Okay. So I've learned now that whenever you do something in Mixcraft that involves VSTs, your best bet is to do like an in-project bounce, like freeze the track. So it makes a WAV file of it, and then you can kind of tell if that's going. So, here's an interesting one. So when I do like MIDI guitar on the Seventh Guest tracks, and when we did C Dust Run, I do like little MIDI guitars for JPS to play along and listen to. Every once in a while, and we still haven't figured out why, when you bounce down the MIDI guitar, it's an app called, or it's a VST called Ample Hellraiser. And it sounds really good, actually. Yeah, it's really good for a synth metal guitar. Obviously, not as good as an actual human playing it, which is why we only use it for scratch guitars. But that's the VST I use because it sounds like a guitar. So that's what I use. Every once in a while, though, you bounce something down, and it creates a huge ass explosion. A nuclear bomb going off at the start of the track. And JPS has sent me back test mixes of stuff like Coffin Dance from Seventh Guest, the boogie thing that goes on when you're solving the coffin puzzle. Yeah, it's for the longest time, the test MP3 I had to listen to in my car started off with this nuclear blast going off at the start. And he was like, "Are you sure this VST is fine?" No, it's not fine. I'll freeze all the tracks in the future. Sorry.
So it's a good DAW when it's not sending people like explosions or like a weird prog rock tempo in place of what you meant.
I mean, JPS must have gotten it, again. Is he serious? Is this nuclear blast supposed to be there? No, it isn't.
Well, there was. I think it was Coffin Dance that started off with that one. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just go for that kind of noisy industrial thing at the beginning, It didn't seem too terribly out of place.
No, but it was loud.
Yeah, it was pretty loud. The same thing happened in that Infernal Melody song, though. Again, that was another one of the cursed parts of it.
God, that's right. Yes, because one of the things
scared the daylights out of me.
Oh, I didn't even mention that because, of course, one of the things I did when it went silent on me was, again, mute, unmute, solo, unsolo, all the individual tracks. And in that process, I forgot that when you freeze a track, what Mixcraft does is it takes the MIDI data, the MIDI track, makes a separate audio track where it puts the WAV file of that frozen track, and then it mutes the original MIDI track. I had unmuted all of the MIDI tracks so they would play concurrently with the already bounced. So first of all, the violin and the guitar were monstrously loud, and of course the fucking Hellraiser VST does the nuclear explosion again. So this quiet lilting harp sound, 3-4 waltz time, very soothing, starts out with a fucking nuclear blast right at the start. No, not even at the start. No, not even at the start. Like midway through.
Oh, even worse.
One of those classic Trolls nuclear bombs. It's his signature thing.
It was definitely, it was like 3 minutes in. It was completely out of nowhere.
Just enough for you to have your guard down so it could properly scare the shit out of you. Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, one day we're going to have to sample that and actually use it for real. Like use it for something.
Well, I'm sure I've got it in some of these sessions. Obviously, I mute them, but I'm sure they're still there somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure I can recreate it. I'm sure all I have to do is not pay attention, and it just sneaks up on me.
All right, I get a question I really do want to ask. So I know it's been kind of a while, but real quick or not real quick, it's up to you. I'm curious what it's like. This is such a vaguely put question too, because I don't know what I want from it. I just kind of want to hear you talk about it. What do you do? That's really bad. All right, hold on. Let's put some effort into it. Okay, so you're taking a lot of songs that potentially don't have percussion or don't really have a drum track, let's say. Is that I guess I want to just know, is that the most fun to produce a rhythm track for it? And I just want to know more about what it's like to put percussion and rhythm tracks to, scores or things from games that don't have, any sort of percussion.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna let JPS answer, but I just want to get in real quick. It's all fucking ego on my part. I have a drum kit. I'm gonna fucking use it. So, I'm gonna shove that. I'm gonna shove drums into as much shit as I can. So that's my motivation for doing it. I don't know what JPS's is.
So, with me, for a lot of that kind of stuff, it's a combination of things. So you take the original context. Obviously, we're paying homage to, the greatness that was this soundtrack and the game and all that stuff and what it meant, and we're keeping the same general vibes for it, but we're kind of dissociating with the very specific use of it. So the way I approach it is not necessarily, exactly what it was used for in the original game. Just if I were to have, a song with these chords and this kind of general feel to it, how would I play this lead part, or how would I, mix the drums in and stuff like that? And just kind of, whenever you're doing cover stuff like that, one of the most important parts is to make it your own. We're not trying to do note for note covers. We're trying to throw our own spin on it and keep true to the original and pay respect, of course, to the great original, and try to add something of our own into it as well. It's that hubris thing Trolls always talks about.
Yeah, no, that is the professional answer, and you're absolutely right. One of the things we really wanted to do, because we had such fun doing it on the Gabriel Knight record, was to, in a sense, make it like a concept album, because it's just the music, but we wanted to tell the story of the game in musical form. So instead of doing it like a note, it's not a remaster, it's not a recreation of the original soundtrack. It's a way of telling the story using the original music from the games, and repurposing it or reorchestrating it or whatever to tell that story. So we throw in, for the 7th cast, we throw in audio samples from the actual game with permission from Trilobite, by the way. Yay! So that we can, the album starts with "He was a drifter moving from." No, actually, it doesn't even do that. It starts with Stauf going, "Old man Stauf built a house," and does that whole thing, and then it bombs into the game. The theme song from the actual, and then it goes into "He was a drifter," and then starts telling the story of Stauf, and then it starts telling the story of all the 7 guests, and eventually. We drip feed in stuff from Tad, and then the whole thing ends with the confrontation in the room at the top, and it's got samples of Tad and Stauf battling it out, and the 7th guest part ends with Tad going, "You fixed it, I'm free again," or whatever the fuck he says, and then the closing credit, "Skeletons in My Closet," which has Jackie, from CGG singing on it. comes in as sort of like the closing credits thing. And one of the cool things that we did, I can't remember if it was my idea or JPS's, but the seventh guest outro, the one that ends with Tad going, "You freed me, everything's changed, now and forever." Oh, that's the name of the tune, "Now and Forever." And it goes into this lovely major chord, like everything's resolved, angels are singing, all of that stuff. And then we do this thing where there's we actually taken the main theme from the 11th Hour, which is the game played on Hawaiian guitar, and we've EQ'd it so it sounds like it's coming out of a TV. And then we play the news report from the 11th Hour intro where it says, "Police have stopped looking for Robin Morales. It's clear that something awful has happened to her." And it goes click, and there's the sound of grinding gears, and then the clock strikes 11, and Stoff laughs manically, and that's how the seventh guest bit ends.
Awesome.
Oh,
Then,
yeah, that was so satisfying.
Right, quite
Because
cinematic.
that would lead into the 11th Hour bit. And obviously, the 11th Hour is not going to end on such a poetic note. It's going to end because it has to. It has to end with the main menu theme, Mr. Death. It has to, because there's a line in that very, very silly song that says, "I can't sing the rest." And we have to just stop the record right there. That has to be the last note on the record.
That's
the last
beautiful.
note has to be a record scratch. Yeah, so we even have to switch around the lyrics to make that fit, but I'm just dead set on it. Even one of our guest contributors to the record, Frederick, actually backseat designer Frederick, he did some synth work on one of the 11th Hour tracks. He suggested that if we can do it, let's make that record scratch, the one that sounds when you pick something in the main menu in 11th Hour. "I can't sing the rest," record scratch. Let's put that in a looped run out groove on the last side of the final, so it just goes on forever. We're actually
I like stuff like that a lot.
Frederick Olson's been contributing some synths to Trolls to add in. That's some of his contributions to the project. And I didn't know which were his and which weren't, so Trolls sent me a project. I even forget which song it was, but I was doing the mixing, and halfway through it, I got to this one track that just made my eyes water. And I sent a message to Trolls. I'm like, "What is that just unholy abomination?" And you go, "Oh, that's just Frederick." It's like, "Oh, okay, well, that doesn't explain it, but it explained it at the same time,
Yeah, that tracks. Yeah. It was one of the lead instruments, and I don't know. I mean, Fred sent me some of this, the synth stuff that he did, and I put that into the project file that I was doing. And he sent along a version of the lead. It's the track is "Rain," which is sort of like the main theme of the 11th Hour. It plays during all the significant bits. It's a really weird track too. I love it. And he sent me in the lead bit, but played on this. Like, imagine, it was almost like a Trent Reznor-ish thing. Like, he'd taken some sort of synthesizer, like a real modular synthesizer, and he'd played the thing on it, the lead on it, but then he'd run it through like a
tube
guitar
streamer
pedal or something. Or he just recorded onto a cassette tape and then ate the cassette tape and vomited it back up or something. I don't know what he did to it, but it just sounded like nightmarish.
Played it through that Boss heavy metal pedal that everyone likes to shit on.
I was going to bring that up earlier. It's the Boss Metal Zone into the board is the
Metal
industrial
Zone,
sound.
yes. Nice.
Yeah.
And it sounded awesome. And it's in the track. Obviously, we lowered the volume a bit, and maybe gave it some reverb and stuff, but it's in there because you can't throw out something that evil. It just has to stay in.
Right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially in this kind of a project. I mean, the whole tone of it is that little bit of darkness, that little bit of, that edge, like you say, kind of, I mean, Phantasmagoria too, because I played it recently, went in the direction of going just a little bit darker than anything before, just a little bit more nudity, a little bit more, that sort of thing.
Second one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, especially, oh, sorry. Am I interrupting?
No. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I just saw the meter going up and down. I was like, oh, shit, am I interrupting someone? No. Yeah, you're right. It's sort of a darker. I mean, it's supposed to be gothic rock, but also, Seventh Guest is kind of a Scooby-Doo gothic horror thing. I mean, that's at least what Graham Devon, one of the designers, described it as. It's horror, but it's Scooby-Doo horror. It's not, it's not gonna.
You can take off its mask at the end, and it's okay.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. I mean, there is vomit, but it's not. But the 11th Hour went a bit in a more sort of let's be gritty, edgelordy kind of type of people, and it's actually what drove drove Trilobite to pieces, unfortunately, because they didn't, the two designers didn't see eye to eye on that idea. But basically, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's slightly goofy horror-ish, but we are trying to treat it with very deep respect. I mean, instead of people remembering, I would imagine, and there are a lot. I mean, if you see YouTube reviews of The Seventh Guest and The 11th Hour, everyone talks about how goofy the FMVs are and how slow the gameplay is, and how the puzzles have nothing to do with the story, and how the story is really hard to follow as well. And all of this stuff. And yeah, you could totally make that argument that it's goofy, at least with modern eyes, especially with modern eyes, I should say. But there is a really, really good story in there that deserves to be told and deserves to be treated seriously. At least I feel.
Right.
I mean, even the official novelization. We were talking about this before we started the show. Even the official novelization is pretty damn goofy, and it was written by the dude who wrote the original script. So somewhere between the game and writing the novelization, he just decided, okay, yeah, it's a cartoon now. Fuck it.
Like, I actually got high as shit right around midway, and
something like that. But we're trying to like tell it like the Netflix adaptation of The Seventh Guest. Like we want to treat this as seriously as possible. And on a personal note, it's also been kind of a dark time for me personally making this project. So obviously some stuff has gone into darker territory audio wise than we would normally. I mean, Sins of the Fathers was this like fun and games kind of let's fucking do this, let's pump it up and try and tell the story soberly and seriously, of course, but also let's bring in some break beats, let's sample the almond break, let's do fun shit with this one got a little heady at times, for me personally at least.
Well, as an audience, though, I mean, that's feeling emotion or feeling something like that in the music. I mean, because obviously it's going to come through. People want that. I mean, something that's raw, something that is a little bit off, or maybe some dissonance just in your own life. I mean, you can look at that with a lot of famous musicians when things are going really difficult for them. Oftentimes the music they produce has something extra in it. It's like you lose, we win. Yeah.
I mean, sucks to be George Sanger, who has to listen to has to listen to a depressed Danish person knocking out versions of his tunes. But yeah, that's
it's working. You guys are more than halfway there. I'm looking at your numbers, and I know it. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I talk about that all the time, though. It's kind of like the artist's dilemma, because especially in this realm, great art comes from suffering and all of that stuff. Right. So it's like, when you have art that isn't inspired by, hurt, then it's not going to come out sounding deep and meaningful.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it's that double-edged sword. Okay, so I wrote this great music, or we did this great music, and now I'm rich and I'm famous and I'm happy, and well, how do I write that same song again? Well, you can't. It's just It's like, why does Metallica not sound like the same Metallica from 1985? Well, because they're not drug addicts and they're rich.
Exactly.
It's just not going to be the same.
How can Jonathan Davis go out and well, obviously he has his own issues. I'm not trying to belittle him or anything, but I mean, how can he go out and sing stuff from the first Korn record in his $1 million Adidas tracksuit? Now he does it, and he does it spectacularly. But you think, okay,
right? Yeah.
Well, they get better on the technical side, but they lose that angsty, early energy. So it's like sometimes it balances out, and not always. Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume with something like that, it's more of a performance than anything. Which, nothing wrong with that. I'm not knocking anything like that, but I would bet it's quite a bit of performance involved there.
Oh yeah. That's it.
And I mean, serendipitously, I feel not to bring this back to me all the time, although that is one of my traits. It's something I'm very good at. Serendipitously, we picked a game to tackle, or a project to tackle, that actually, if you look at it a certain way, if you don't look at it as a 90s FMV with some, frankly, slightly hammy acting and puzzles disconnected from the plot and all that, there is a very deep and serious story there if you want to look deep enough, and you can translate that into some fairly dark music. You can tell that story in again, like I say, it's the Netflix adaptation of The Seventh Guest. Like you can tell that story in a different way that is disconnected from the Again, I'm not saying that's the legacy of the Seventh Guest, because Seventh Guest is a magnificent game that deserves praise and respect, but it does have a reputation these days, at least amongst, YouTubers, dumb YouTubers like myself, for being slightly goofy. And the record we're doing is not goofy, and partly because we want to pay respect to the work that was done, and partly also because of where my personal headspace has been the past few months. So yeah, that's where it is.
Part of me wants to give some of that credit, which I have no right to do because this is for you to say, Trolls. Well, both of you, honestly. But part of me almost wonders how much you growing up with Vangelis and Mike Oldfield has to do with your propensity to tell a story with the music. Because I grew up heavily influenced by Vangelis and kind of influenced my professional life, or what hopefully is my former professional life. Hopefully this game does good enough, but it's that desire to tell a story with the music. Because I always felt like, long story short, that the music in, let's say, Blade Runner was one of the characters in the film. Like it was
absolutely
that vital to and if we've we've totally gotten away from that in modern film, and we don't really cherish or like, I don't know, value, I guess, the scores as what they used to be. But anyway, I'm going to just go ahead and mutate this into a question. Do you think that could be the case, that listening to Tubular Bells and Vangelis has your mind frame of looking at how to make the music a character?
For me personally, I think I don't know if it was a catalyst or anything. I've always been interested in storytelling and knowing my limitations I'm not a writer. I'm not a game designer. I'm not any of these things. I'm not even a musician technically, but now I have a band with an actual musician in it, so we can use that as a storytelling framework. And I mean, some of my favorite bands or some of my favorite albums, like The Wall and Marilyn Manson's Antichrist Superstar and stuff like that, are all records that tell a story. Sometimes a little convoluted, sometimes a little hard to follow. Those are fun. I mean, one of my favorite albums is Genesis's The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which is completely impenetrable, but it is a story nonetheless, and it's really interesting. So yeah, I love storytelling outside of your... Because when you say storytelling, you either think of four dudes around a campfire or reading a book. I love the idea of alternate methods of storytelling. Music is a storytelling medium. Most people don't seem to either agree or care about that part of it. They see it as, you got a Spotify playlist. Let's watch me whip and watch me nay. Fine, if that's what you're into, do that. I'm not knocking that at all, but it's also good for telling some sort of cohesive story. And that's what we tried to do with the Gabriel Knight record, where we had these long medleys of different tracks that told the story of a character. Like Malia's theme started out with the Voodoo Mound music and then morphed into, I think it was the swamp music, like when you're going to the Hound 4. And then there's the tune that plays right when you're inside her mansion and all this stuff. So we made these medleys that told stories of individual characters. Eyes of the Snake was the story of Crash, the informant, who ends up being choked to death in a church from millions of miles away. And fun times.
Well, so your Kickstarter is doing really well. Now I'm looking at it in Canadian dollars because I'm over here in Canada, but you're well over halfway. I think here you, by the time this episode comes out early in the week, it'll be even further. You guys have some really fantastic rewards, including even versions of the record that have colors in them instead of the traditional color and some other cool stuff. So why don't you let us know what some of those rewards are?
JBS, again, I've been talking too much, as I always do.
No, you're a better talker. I know you always say that English is your second language, but you speak better English than I do, and I was born in Milwaukee. So,
which we all know is the home of the English language.
Yes, exactly. But no, so there are some great little rewards for the Kickstarter stuff. You know, like you said, the colored trolls will know better the specifics of the colors. There's a few color variants, but the one that gets me is George Sanger was so very kind and went and dug into his own personal collection of stuff from this time period, and he found an old Fat Man, which is his nickname, George Fat Man Sanger, an old Fat Man coloring book that he's very graciously donated as part of the reward scheme, and so there that in and of itself is worth the price of admission, I think.
Oh yeah, that one
It's
is
beautiful
fantastic.
looking.
Yeah, it was made in 1994, so a year after the Seventh Guest came out, and it's the original. It's not like something we photocopied or anything. He actually dug it out and is going to sign it, and also it is an authentic artifact that he's sending us. We're very, very grateful about that. Also, I kind of feel bad about putting you on the spot all the time, JPS. I'm very sorry about that. It's just I don't want to be Billy Corgan. So
Believe me, you're not.
That's
Well,
all
I
right.
don't
The only
wanna
thing
call
you'll be smashing is your Kickstarter goals out of the
Hopefully.
park.
Yes, that's
Wow.
the plan.
Thank you.
God, I hope so. And thank you so much. Yeah, and oh, the other rewards is we're going to do like a cassette tape version that I'm going to hand dub on my dad's old Technics professional grade level. But I'm going to like buy blank cassette tapes and do a hand dub version of it. I mean, it's going to sound as cassette tapes that you can actually buy today, which is not as great. If anyone's ever watched the Techmoan video, you'll know cassette tapes didn't always sound like crap, but now they do because all you have is the cheap shit. So it's not going to sound terribly great, but it is going to be a collector's item. And we are going to do, as a band, we're going to get me and JPS and Jackie and Michael, our bass player, and Eric, our violin player. We're going to get all in a little Discord huddle and record individual greetings to the person who backed for this tape. So all the tapes are going to start with a personal greeting to that person. Yeah, that sort of stuff.
That's really cool.
And there's the box set thing where one of the things I kind of had to, I wanted to get that in there for no other reason than because I thought it would be super, super fun. You know how in Seventh Guest, all the guests get a secret letter from Stoff? Like it goes, my dear Edward, welcome to my house. No, actually, that's Brian. Dear Mr. Dutton, welcome to my house. The house is full of clues, all this sort of stuff. So I wanted to include like a letter to the backer from Stoff. It's basically just going to be, the letters from the Seventh Guest, but reworded. So welcome to my house. The house is full of clues. Since I remain, as always, your host, Henry Stoff. And the reason why I wanted to do that is A, because, hey, it would be pretty cool. And B, because my wife writes in cursive. Like this really elaborate cursive, and she's never been able to write in anything else. She doesn't do block letters, like she really has to concentrate to do it. So she writes in this really, sometimes slightly hard to read, illegible cursive, but it really looks like 1920s, 1930s period cursive. So I'm gonna twist her arm and have her write the letters to the backers.
Oh, nice.
So it looks
Lovely.
like it's
Right.
period authentic.
Oh, that's lovely.
I like that touch there. So, before we wrap up the episode, I want to hear from both of you. Any shout outs you want to give to including this project, obviously, go to Kickstarter, back it, Soup's on, hit it right into Google. It's going to take you there. Click the buttons. It's going to be fantastic. But outside of that, is there anything that, we'll start with you, John, that you want to bring up or shout out to?
Well, first off, we got to thank, George Sanger for being just so into what we're doing, just a silly little project that, we take very seriously, but we understand that we're just some people coming and trying to make a vinyl for our own, let's face it, for our own greedy ends, because we both want more vinyls with our music on it, like Trolls was saying earlier.
Absolutely.
But he's been so gracious and so helpful, and that video he's got that we put on the Kickstarter page is just hilarious. I just want to thank everyone that's on the SQH Discord. Just everyone here is part of that Discord, I believe. But you just cannot imagine how friendly and knowledgeable and funny everyone is there. I could spend all day. I have to tell myself, do actual work today. Don't spend all day talking with everyone on SQH Discord, because I have work. I got to get this mix done. Everyone there is just so amazingly helpful, and like I mentioned earlier, not just with video game stuff. They just, you could talk about 1970s cars and someone will know exactly your answer, just nothing but great people over there.
Well, it's a really cool demographic, adventure gamers. I mean, if you think about it this way, although there are some similarities, there is no real common denominator to any of us outside of we all played adventure games. What a random common denominator. So you've got this pool of like the coolest people that are just so different. And yet we have this like locked in thing that's the same with all of us. It's such a cool dynamic.
And that's one of the beautiful things about this community. I've been part of bunches of different communities in my time, and most of them just fantastic, but nothing like this, where it's just so accepting and just everyone is so very different. And that's one of the things that makes it so cool, is that everyone has these different perspectives from different parts of the world, different experiences in life, and just the whole 9 yards. And I never tire of hearing it,
I mean, one of the coolest things, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet, because I did nothing but start a Discord. Actually started as a Slack server, and then someone suggested, let's move it to Discord. And I was like, okay, there's 10 of us. Why not? Who cares? And I turned my back on it for 5 minutes, and 800 people have joined. I had nothing to do with any of that. I just opened a Discord server. But one of the funniest facts, or one of my favorite facts about that community, and JPS is absolutely right, it's a community of absolutely brilliant people that I am so lucky and thrilled to have in my life, and I don't know what they're doing with me, but it's great that they do it anyway. One of my favorite things is we have one of the lead devs, if not the inventor of DOSBox, and one of the lead devs of ScumVM in the same place, swapping dirty memes on our Not Safe for Work channel. That is just fucking brilliant.
I know. I love it there. I'm too intimidated to jump in, and I keep thinking about what I want to say or how I want to contribute, because obviously that's one of the ones I have notifications on for.
Oh, well, absolutely. No, there is no bar of entry, and there's no you have to be this interesting to be in. I'm sure a lot of those 800 people are lurkers. But it does feel like joining, like going to a clubhouse, and with like Stranger Things type shit, and just sit there and read comics and talk weird shit. Like, hey, I looked at a poster of a 1970 car and my dick got hard. What's that about?
I can tell you what it's about.
Yeah, I got some ideas.
We're not in the vortex right now.
Oh shit! Oh, gotta keep it in the vortex. Sorry,
God, in the vortex.
Oh, shout out to Pixie, our vortex moderator, who is absolutely
amazing.
A princess. Damn it! Don't obey your queen. She knows what she's talking about. JPS already stole my shout outs. Yes, Chris, Discord. Yes, George Sanger. Absolutely. To all the composers who I've interacted with in the past, who have turned out, as Paul said, never meet your heroes except for the ones that are really cool, and they've all been really cool. Roberta Vaughn obviously gets a lot of credit, because she keeps hyping me up and picking me up when shit goes down. In fact, she even got me to PAX last year when, all the, me getting booted off a moderating panel for absurdly stupid reasons, and she went, you know what, let's just get him on a plane anyway, come and hang out. And she's been absolutely fucking amazing. You guys, Anna, Paul, you guys are fucking awesome, and the whole CGG crowd are absolutely awesome as well. And to Darcy, James Iha, and Jimmy Chamberlain for putting up with Billy Corgan.
That's perfect. And I think you have a couple of shout outs too, don't you, Paul, to a couple of the people in the Adventure Game Network, and drop those down.
Right. So, and also go check out 47 error47.band. Nailed it. Damn it. There will be no edit there. So just error47.band, and you guys could check out the CDOS run. Wait, CDOS run. Sorry, I read that as CD.
It's got some Quest for Glory music on it, so get in there. Yeah.
One try for Quest. It's such a dumb pun. And I think JP's even had to ask me, what the fuck does that mean? And I was like, I don't know. It's you know those children's books? See Paul run. Paul's got a ball. Hooray. C does run.
I'm just so glad to hear there was thought behind it. That it's not just there like by happenstance, because now it's 10 times more fun. C does run. That's brilliant. All right. Yeah, go there. Check out our friends in the Adventure Game Hotspot Network. One Short Eye has a video dropping right now, but for when you guys are hearing this, like a week ago. But still, go check it out, because it's a speedrun video on Monkey Island. Look, it doesn't matter. It's One Short Eye. He's got some of the best YouTube content out there. So check him out. An Adventure Game.
I forgot to plug the AGH network. I'm going to get booted.
Oh.
Damn
Oh,
it.
you better do it right now. Oh, that's what we're doing. We'll all plug it together. 1, 2, 3. AGH.
Do the thing.
AGH.
Buy my stuff.
Woohoo. Yeah. Just pretend Paul's reading off my list.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
is.
If you're listening, Weird Gaming Adventure.
No, I think you only have to do it on your channel, right? This is
Yeah, we do it
you're
on
good.
ours.
Yeah, you just happen to.
And I'm not doing anything right now, so I'm cool.
Yeah, totally.
You're perfect.
No, you're good. So yeah, check out all of our friends there. I think that's really all I wanted to do. And you know what? Since you're here, trolls, let me just embarrass you a little bit and say, and shout out to you and thank you very much because you're Space Quest historian. There you go. There's the shout out. So this isn't as cringy. So go check out Space Quest historian on YouTube. I'm sure every one of our listeners literally already has, but actually click
We all
subscribe if
have.
you haven't, maybe, because sometimes everyone gets a little lazy with that. Click the damn button. Sorry for yelling at you. But also to trolls, just personally on a personal level, thank you for being you because I love your channel so much. It's like my favorite TV show, and I don't know if I've ever said it to you before, but like I wouldn't be making the game that I'm making right now if it wasn't for you. Literally, like your AGS videos were the moment where I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm finally gonna do this, and your videos taught me how to start doing it. And you've just been priceless to me in my life in many different areas. And so, thank you. You're awesome.
Fucking hell. Oh, cheers, man. Thank you so much. I'm very bad with how to. I don't know.
I don't either. It's fine.
with
No,
that sort of-
you're doing good.
None of us are good at that. We all
Yeah, I
think
don't
we
know how
all
to
suck,
receive
but we all
things.
know we all rock
oh,
at the same
I
time.
know.
And
I know. Thank you for keeping my stuff safe. All the stuff I bought on eBay and I couldn't get shipped to Denmark. I just send it to Paul and he'd like sit on it. So and then drop ship it to me. So thank you so much for committing mail fraud on my behalf.
Great. Now I don't know how to receive that myself. Neither of us. We can't.
No.
I'm incapable. Anna, do something.
I mean,
And
he
that
even
concludes
sent me- he
today's
even sent me a-
episode.
He sent me a Fate of Atlantis box on the site. It was like, it was like, okay, I got all this shit that you sent to my house. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it, but I'm going to send it to you. Is there anything else you need? And I said, I don't know. Do you have a Fate of Atlantis? And he goes, yeah.
Just
and so he
happened
chucked
to.
a Fate of Atlantis box in there. So cheers, man. You're a prince.
Thanks.
He
Shane.
absolutely is.
And shout out to JPS because you make my shit sound good.
Yay.
So good. It's great. Okay, and now that concludes today's episode of the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. And hey, we hope you enjoyed our chat with Trolls and John of Error 47 and everything that goes with it. And if you want to stay connected with us outside of all the other links we've already thrown you, you can stay updated on future episodes. Follow us on Twitter at CGG Podcast or at Phantom Fellows. Like us on Facebook, Classic Gamers Guild. We're also a page, Classic Gamers Guild Podcast. Join us on Instagram at CGG Podcast. Send us an email, mail@classicgamersguild.com. And don't forget to check out our Patreon. We will read your names next time, I swear to you. Thank you so much for supporting us. All of you are amazing. We might even pay some attention to you. No, I'm not just saying that for the 50th time. I swear to you. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time for another exciting adventure in gaming.
And also wishlist my adventure game to go to thephantomfellows.com. Okay, all right, I'm done.
That's the one.
Yeah, don't do a murder.
That was fun. No, that was so much fun.